it was 5 years ago, and at the time, I had quit my job as an engineer working with all men, and had, like, seriously no friends besides my sister. Well, she has to be my friend, right? But I have no mom friends, and I'm not sure if it's one of you in here, you just don't have someone in your mom tribe. And Rita was one of my first friends in my mom tribe, and I'm so thankful for her, and it's been, just God has really truly gifted me with her friendship. She just oozes joy, she loves Jesus, she knows everyone. I always tease her that. And if you talk to her for long enough, she might convince you to run a marathon. Because I did that. So if you want some exercise, you should talk to her. So she's been going to North Ranch for 20 years. That's why she knows everybody. She's been married to Tyler for 14 and a half years. She has 2 beautiful kids, and she serves in DI for 11 years. So many of your 3-year-olds have had Miss Rita or will have. So man, they hit the jackpot with that one. So I just want to introduce you to Rita. Well, I just did. So I'm going to give her the mic without talking.
Okay. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Rita.
Thank you, Nancy. That's what I do to my Discovery Island kids, and if they don't respond, I'm like, oh, is nobody awake today? Say it again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Rita.
Much better. Good job. Okay, so as Angela just introduced me, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rita Thompson, and Angela did an awesome job introducing my family, so I have a picture to show you guys of my family. Oh, there they are. So that is my husband Tyler, and our 2 children. Olivia will be 5 in July, crazy, and Alex just turned 1 this past February. And as she said, I've been a part of Northridge for over 20 years. I was back from the Temple Baptist days in Redford, so I've been around for a while. Anybody else back from the Temple Baptist days? Yeah. All right. So we've been around. So today I'm going to be sharing my story with you guys about having starry-eyed hope. The definition of hope, I'm sure you guys all know, but from the dictionary, it's a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. And when I thought of hope, I was just trying to think of the names of God, and there is a name of God for hope. And I have a verse to go with it. There it is. So it's Elohim Yachol. And the verse that I thought of that goes with it is Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And you guys all know God is hope. There is nothing on earth more certain than hope in God. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He is our anchor in the present and in the future. And I know all of you have had things in your life that you hope for. You hope to get into a certain college. You hope for a certain career. You hope to meet someone. You hope to get married. You hope to have a family. And that's where my journey started. About 2.5 years after my husband and I were married, we decided we wanted to start trying for a family, which is probably like many of you. So we planned this fancy trip to Hawaii, and it was going to be like our baby-making vacation. And I just assumed I would be like my mom, who is extremely fertile, where my dad would basically shake her hand and she was pregnant, and I'd come back pregnant. And we came back from this great vacation, and I wasn't pregnant. And I was actually really surprised. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it can sometimes take more than once. So we just kept trying, and month after month, I wasn't pregnant. And I was just really starting to get concerned, because why am I not getting pregnant? And meanwhile, my husband and I were in leadership in the Young Marrieds class from way back then. And so we were really involved, and we were there every week, and I mean, every single week, there was someone, 2 people, 5 people walk in, guess what, I'm pregnant, guess what, I'm pregnant. And I would rejoice with them, I'd hug them, and I would genuinely be happy for them. But then I would just retreat to the bathroom and start bawling my eyes out every single Sunday. It was so hard. So hard to be happy for people that were your friends, but you weren't able to share in that same happiness with them that you wanted so desperately. So it got to the point where I would just be so angry after every month of not being pregnant that like, my husband instilled a rule with me. I had to be 5 days late before he could take a pregnancy test because we were going through them like crazy, and I don't even think they sold them at the dollar store at that point. So they were, it was good though, because I would just be like, I would be 1 day late this time I was pregnant and take that test and just be devastated even more. So finally, after 18 long months of trying to conceive, we were finally pregnant. And I was just ecstatic. I was telling every single person I met, and I couldn't contain my excitement and my joy. And I remember one person, it was an older woman, and I don't even remember her name, but she told me, "Are you even 12 weeks pregnant yet? Have you even had an ultrasound yet?" I said, "No." She's like, "Do you think maybe you should be telling people yet?" And I was like, "It's fine. God's not going to take this baby away from me." And just so you guys all know, God doesn't take anything away from us. We live in a sin-broken world, full of sin. That's why bad things happen. It's not God. So I went for my first doctor appointment. I was 10 and a half weeks, and everything seemed fine. And then a couple days later, I went back for my ultrasound. So I was in there getting ready, and the ultrasound technician was getting her stuff ready, and I was just so excited to like hear that little heartbeat. And instead, I heard these two words: "I'm sorry." "You're sorry? What are you sorry for?" "I'm sorry, but you miscarried." And I just don't think I really remember all that happened. I became hysterical. I was inconsolable. I couldn't breathe. It was probably one of the darkest days of my life. And my husband was trying to calm me down, and the technician had to leave the room because I just couldn't stop just wailing. And they finally calmed me down, and the doctor's like, "Well, you know, your ultrasound shows that you're only 5 weeks along, but you said you're 10, so your baby is not trying to, dispel from your body by itself, so what we're going to have to do is called a D&C, which is it's a very simple procedure, and unfortunately I'm sure some of you have had it, where they have to remove the contents of your uterus to make sure it doesn't stay there and cause problems. And I had to have it right away. So the very next morning, I had to go to the hospital and get this D&C. So here I thought I'm gonna hear my baby's heartbeat, and instead I'm having surgery. I just didn't even know what to think. I just felt so numb and hopeless. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I made my husband call my family, and I made my family call my friends. We didn't have texting then, because this was a long time ago actually. But I just couldn't even bear to look at anyone. It was just too painful. So I went in, had the D&C done, which was actually fairly painless. They give you some nice drugs. So I went in 6 weeks after to have your post-op, make sure everything was good. My doctor wanted me to have some extra blood work. And I thought that was normal. So I said, okay, so I went and got the blood work done, and then she did her exam, and she's like, well, I have something to tell you. You actually didn't have a normal miscarriage. You had something that we call a complete molar pregnancy miscarriage. So basically what it is the sperm has 23 chromosomes, the egg has 23 chromosomes, and they come together to form an embryo. Well, my egg had 0 chromosomes. So instead of forming a baby, it formed a mole. And that mole takes on all the same characteristics of the baby. I felt nauseous, I had pee a lot, my stomach was growing, but it's not really a baby, it's a mole. And if this mole stays inside you too long and it starts releasing into your body, the first place it usually goes is your lungs, and you end up with lung cancer. And I'm just sitting here in total shock. I was by myself because I just thought it was a routine post-op appointment. I didn't ask my husband to come with me. And I'm just sitting here, and this doctor's like, so you have to get a chest x-ray to make sure it didn't spread to your lungs. And then we need to make sure that your HCGs are at 0, because when you're pregnant, as you all know, your HCG levels go up. But with a molar pregnancy, they do as well. So they had to make sure mine were down to 0. And I had to keep having blood work done every week until they were 0, and then 4 more weeks every week until I stayed 0, and then once a month for 1 year. And during that 1 year, we could not try to get pregnant. Because if we tried to get pregnant, and we got pregnant, my body would show my HCG levels going up, but you wouldn't know if it was a molar pregnancy again, a baby, or both. And when your child has, when the baby has a molar pregnancy, whether it's partial, unfortunately is when a mole actually forms on the baby, complete is what I had, there is no chance of survival for the baby. So it's a very risky thing to try to get pregnant that soon after. So, I mean, I had done all this research thinking, oh, 3 months after I had this miscarriage, I can start trying for a baby again, and now you're telling me I have to wait another year. Are you kidding me? And she's like, I'm sorry, you know, we're gonna put you on birth control, you cannot have nukes. That's not even an option for you. I just didn't even know what to do. Thankfully, by the grace of God, my HCGs were at 0 right after my DNC. They stayed at 0 that entire year. I was just so thankful for that, because if it doesn't, you can end up having actually have methotrexate, which is, I guess, kind of like a chemo treatment. So I just kept wondering, like, what is God trying to show me through this waiting period? Is there something I needed to do that I can't do if I have kids? And I remember I even tried to like bargain and plead with God. Like, God, let me be pregnant instead of some other girl who doesn't want to be pregnant, who maybe had a oops and she doesn't want to be pregnant. Magically let her not be pregnant and let me be pregnant instead. I just didn't know what else to do. I was just so hopeless in that situation, and that first miscarriage, it was just very, very dark days for me. And I just know, I know a lot of you guys know, like Angela said, I serve in Discovery Island, and I know sometimes it's hard to love on other people's kids, but let me just tell you, those kids were my lifeline. Being able to be back there with them and loving on me, and they didn't know what was going on in my life, and they're hugging me and kissing me and telling me they love me. It is what brought me through so many of those dark days. Those kids in Discovery Island, they're angels. They don't know what they did for Miss Rita. So after that 1 year, we were finally given the green light to start trying again. And they told us, you know, what you had is extremely rare. We don't even know much about it. It's a genetic condition. So the chances of it happening again are like slim to none. I even have a friend who's a biologist, and she had done research on it for me. And she's like, yeah, it's just not going to happen again. So I felt pretty hopeful that, okay, it's a one-time deal. I'll be okay. So this time, 6 months, thankfully, after we started trying, we were pregnant again. And this time I learned to keep my mouth shut and not tell people, because I did not want to have to go through that again. That was not something I really wanted to do. And because of my first miscarriage, I was considered high risk. So I had to go in earlier, so I went in at 8.5 weeks. My doctor appointment was the same. Everything went well. So I went for my ultrasound. It was the same technician. I felt bad for her. Because it was deja vu all over again. I heard her say, I am so sorry. You've miscarried again. And this time, I wasn't hysterical. I was ticked off. I was angry. I remember I went in the bathroom to change, and I started kicking the garbage can. I was kicking the garbage can, I was throwing things in the bathroom, I was swearing. I never swear. I just don't swear. And I was like, I can't believe you're swearing. I was just so angry, and I remember yelling at the technician. I said, you better not make me wait in that room for 45 minutes for the doctor to schedule my DNC. Just schedule it already and get this thing out of me. Like, I was just angry. Yeah, I was just beside myself. And so the next day I had my DNC. Thankfully, I had planned to go on a scrapbooking weekend with some friends. So my sisters and one of my friends, like pretty much as soon as I got done with the DNC, they swept me up to the cottage that a whole bunch of my friends, actually from Northridge, were at a scrapbooking weekend. And none of them knew I was pregnant. So it was nice to feel like normal, because nobody was asking me anything, but it was still so hard to watch all these women scrapbooking their pregnancies and their newborn babies, and I'm sitting here scrapbooking vacations, which are nice, but when you want your kids to be in that, it was so, so hard. So thankfully we had our own little room, and I just kept going in there and shed a few tears. But it was okay. And I just remembered at the end of that, I just turned to God and I just said, you know, God, if I'm not supposed to be a mom, I'm okay with that. Just take that desire away from me. Just completely remove it from my heart and not let me feel the strong desire to be a mom. I'll be the best aunt in the world. I'll love on my Discovery Island kids. I'll whatever I have to do, but just take this desire away from me because it hurts too much. But he didn't take it away from me. In fact, he made it stronger. And I just was like, okay, God, I'm supposed to be a mom somehow. I don't know how, but I'm supposed to be a mom. So, okay, at least we got that part settled. The desire was stronger, and it gave me a glimmer of hope in that moment to know that he does care, he is still there. I still had to wait. So during this time, I actually started getting into running, and running was my second lifeline because that's when I was able to it was me, God, and the pavement. I was out there, I was pouring my heart out to him, I was crying, I was laughing, I was angry, I was sad, I was every emotion. I mean, people probably thought I was crazy when they saw me running behind, because I would express, I was talking to God out loud, literally out loud. But it really healed me. It was like, he's our counselor, he's the good counselor. And I was just pouring my heart out to him. And during that though, it also helped me to get in shape. So after a whole another year of more chest x-rays and blood tests and everything, of not trying, for the third round, I'm like, okay, third time's a charm. So I was exercising, I was eating well. Nancy Gregg actually had suggested I might try acupuncture. So I tried that. I was willing to try anything at this point. I'm like, okay, and actually, it was actually pretty nice. So this time, 1 month on the first try, after using the acupuncture and everything else, I was pregnant. And I was really hopeful, like, okay, I'm doing all the right things. It's gotta work. Not thinking in my head, okay, this is a genetic issue. Oh, which by the way, I didn't think I told you guys. That second miscarriage was another complete molar pregnancy. So that's why I had to do all those blood tests and wait a year again. So to have to happen twice, like my doctor never even heard of it. So she actually politely told me through her tears, if you want to get pregnant again, can you please find another doctor? She's like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like I can help you. I don't know how to deal with what you're going through because there's nothing out there about what you're going through. And I mean, I was very grateful for her honesty. So, so when I got pregnant the third time, I started going to a new doctor, and I explained to her everything that happened, and I was still high risk, so I went in like super early at like 7 weeks, and did the initial exam, like always. Everything turned out great. And then they had to do the ultrasound. Well, at this office, they don't do ultrasounds at the doctor's office. You have to go to the hospital. So I went to St. Mary's Hospital, and I just remember I was in the room, and for the first 2 ultrasounds, I couldn't see it. It was behind my head. But for this one, it was like right in front of me, so I could see it. And the technician was getting ready, and before she started, I remember looking like on this wall right over here, and there was a cross. And I just remember seeing Jesus' arms just outstretched on it, and I just felt like in that moment he took himself off that cross and just like came and wrapped his arms around me. And I just felt calm. Like I wasn't nervous, I wasn't shaking, I was just totally calm. And she started the ultrasound, and I looked at it, and I knew what it looked like. And she said, I'm sorry, and I said, it's okay. I wasn't hysterical, I wasn't angry, I was sad, but I felt a peace that transcends all understanding, that you know can only come from God. Because here I am staring at my 3rd miscarriage, and looking at it, I knew it was another complete moment. I could tell just looking at it. And I knew what lay ahead for me, but I also knew what door God was trying to close. I finally realized it. And I remember I said, okay. I said, let's get this D&C scheduled and let's move on. So I did my fair share of shedding tears later when I got home, but I felt okay, the most okay I felt through this entire journey. And the next morning I had my D&C, and I've been through it so many times now, I was okay. So I told my husband, like, you can just go to work. Because they give you anesthesia, so I couldn't go to work until the next day. So I remember just sitting at home and just watching TV, and one of my girlfriends, my friend Colleen, she had called me and she didn't know I was pregnant. She didn't know I had a miscarriage. She didn't know anything. And through the summer, before I got pregnant, I was actually training for sprint triathlons. You know, swimming, biking, running, and just, you know, with my friends. And she was one of those friends. And she's like, hey, what are you doing on October 10th? And I said, I don't know, what am I doing? She's like, we're gonna run a marathon. And I'm like, you're crazy. I'll do it with you, okay. I blamed the anesthesia, because I wasn't off it yet, and I blamed that I gave into peer pressure, good peer pressure, like that. So I got online and I signed up for this marathon with her, which was gonna be in 10 weeks. And then my husband got home and I'm like, what did I just do? How on earth did I just sign up for a marathon in 10 weeks? Because typically you should train for at least like 16 to 20 weeks for a full marathon. So I was like, okay, well, I ended up with this DNC. I actually had some complications. So I wasn't able to train for a couple more weeks. The first two, actually, I bounced right back like a few days later, but this one was a tough one to overcome. And as I suspected, it was another complete molar pregnancy, but my HCG levels were still not zero. So I had to keep going in for the blood tests, and one week after another, they were like holding on to just a few more, and the doctor's like, if it doesn't go down next week, I'm gonna have to give you a dose of methotrexate. And I'm like, oh, God, please, God, just let it go. And thankfully, by the grace of God, that next week it went down. But thinking to myself, like this time, I was only 7 weeks pregnant when they found it. The first time I was 10 weeks, and my HCG level was through the roof at 7 weeks. So my doctor told me, the more you do this, you are gonna end up with cancer, so you need to stop. And I said, already done. I'm stopping. He's like, you need to permanently make yourself not be able to have kids because it is extremely dangerous for you to get pregnant. So that was definitely, and my OB is a Christian, so hearing it, the medical side and the spiritual side from you know, a wise doctor was very reassuring to me, and it just solidified in my heart to know we are done. No more trying to have kids. But I still didn't know where God was going to take us next. I had the hope in it, but I didn't know yet. And so while I was training, I actually wasn't part of a team yet. I was training by myself because my friend lives in Novi, so we aren't able to train together, and I live in Livonia, so I did all my training by myself. But through that training, all those miles of training, especially like, you know, we get to 17, 18, 20 miles, God really spoke to me. And I remember he kept putting on my heart my life verse, which I have up here. And my life verse is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And he kept putting that verse over and over and over on my heart. Just trust in me, trust in me. And then I just felt like one day he's like, okay, are you done doing it your way now? Are you finally done? Because I want to do it my way now, but you need to be willing. Are you willing? Are you ready? Are you able? And I just remember I just said, yes, Father. I'm relinquishing everything to you. I'm done trying to do it by myself. And I just felt like all the junk, the sadness, the hurt, the pain, the disappointment just fell right off. And I felt like God gave me that clear direction to know that my family was going to become a family through adoption. Now my sister also has different kind of infertility issues than me, and earlier that year had adopted my niece Molly. And even though I loved her to pieces, the thought of adoption never crossed my mind, even going through all these infertility issues and miscarriages, until God brought it to my mind. And I knew that's how he was going to grow our family. So that December of 2010, we started the process for adoption. And it's a really exciting thing, but it's a very daunting thing too. There's a lot of paperwork, oh my goodness, all the paperwork, and physicals, and criminal background checks, and immunizations, and home studies, and it was just crazy. We had to create a profile book, which is kind of like almost like, not like you're selling yourself, but kind of like a book to show these birth moms who you are and what kind of family their child is going to grow up in, because they get to decide where their child goes, not you. So we had to make it look, you know, as honest but eye-opening as we could for them. So we were finally approved in April of 2011, and then we just had to wait. Now for many of you, when you were pregnant, you had pretty much 9 months to prepare for this baby. Well, when you adopt, you don't have 9 months. You sometimes have 9 weeks, 9 days. My sister had the day of. She got a phone call that morning and she was in the hospital that night holding her baby girl. So you don't know what kind of time you have, but then on the other hand, you don't want to prepare too much because you don't want to get your hopes up, especially then if the birth mom changes her mind. So we just had to play the waiting game. Then in January 2012, we got a phone call. And the phone call was about a woman who was 39 weeks pregnant, and she chose us based on our profile book, and I was just so ecstatic. Like, finally, in 1 week or less, I'm gonna be a mom. And she didn't have the greatest circumstances. Her ex-husband was in prison. Like, it was just a lot of things against her that it just would have been very hard for her to parent. So we were supposed to meet her, but 2 days before, she went into labor. So we were just waiting patiently to see if we were gonna get a phone call to go to the hospital, and we didn't hear anything. And then the next day, nothing. And by the third day, we got the point. She changed her mind. And even though we never met her, we never even saw the baby, it was still devastating to me because this was the closest I had become to finally being a mom, and it was already taken away from me. So not long after that, Northridge actually had introduced the idea of running the Chicago Marathon with Team Real Vision. And I was already run 3 marathons at the point. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it, no problem. And for me, I was like, this would be a good way to get my mind off of all this. And if I can't have kids of my own, at least I can help these kids in Africa. So it'll do something good for someone. And my husband, who hates running, he actually ended up signing up with me. And to this day, 6 years later, he still hates running, but he still does it. But it really was just a good outlet for us to, just kind of take our mind off of all this. And not even two weeks later, my husband has a voicemail on his phone. My husband used to have to see a counselor for some stress and anxiety-related work issues. And this counselor knew that we wanted to adopt, but he hadn't seen her in well over a year. There was just this voicemail that said, "Hey Tyler, I'm your counselor. I remember you and your wife wanted to adopt, and I was wondering if you still were looking to adopt because I have a young client who's pregnant and looking for a family for her baby." I'm like, you gotta call her back right now. Call her back. So he called her back. We set up a time to go and meet with her, and we answered any questions she had, and the birth mom and birth father liked our answers, so we finally met all of them together. So both birth parents, birth mom's parents, and us, and the counselor. We all hit it off great. We answered any questions they had. Everything was wonderful, and we're like, okay. But they still, they had time to decide what they wanted to do. So we planned every month to meet for coffee, for dinners, every couple of weeks even, just to get to know each other until they made their decision. So I was feeling pretty hopeful, but I didn't want to get my hopes up because I just had too much disappointment in that area. So I remember this so vividly, like it was yesterday. So on April 23rd, I was sitting at my desk at work, and I was listening to music for choir. I used to be in choir here. I'm no Christy Curtis, but I just love to sing. So I was listening to the music so I could learn my parts, and there was a song we sang. I don't remember the name of the song, but there was a line in it about widows and orphans. And whenever I would sing in choir, I'd get all choked up. And that day when I was singing it in my head, at my desk, it was like God pushed the rewind button in my head. And I was like, oh, okay. He took me back to a vision that he gave me in December of 2008, so 3.5 years prior. I was again sitting at my desk listening to Christmas music, and I was listening to a song for the first time called Merry Christmas by Third Day. And it was, this song was basically about this family who wanted to adopt a little girl from China. But she, with an international adoption, it takes a lot longer and more years. We were doing domestic adoption. So she wasn't there yet, but they were praying this would be the last Christmas without her, and this was like their way of singing Merry Christmas through the song. And as I'm listening to the song, God gave me this vision. Now God speaks to me in visions. When I have important things in my life, that's how he speaks to me, and he gives me these visions. And he gave me a vision of my husband holding a little girl who was like 5 or 6 months old, and she was of Asian descent. And I was like, what does that mean? And I, at that time, had only had 2 miscarriages, and the thought of adoption was not even on our radar yet. And I just was like, okay, so I shared that with my husband, and he's like, does this mean we're supposed to adopt from China? I'm like, I don't know. And pretty much as soon as we discussed it, we forgot about it. And neither one of us remembered that vision again. Until that day. The child that the birth mom was carrying was a girl. At Christmas, she would have been 5 months old, and her birth mom is half Japanese. Now, if you can tell me we don't serve a God of miracles who pays attention to those smallest of details to even show us the ethnicity of our child 3 years before she was conceived, I don't understand how anyone could not believe in a God like that. And I know for me, I love prophecy. I love reading in Isaiah how 700 years before Jesus was prophesied about his birth, and God showed me a prophecy of my own daughter. And it was just amazing. He is the God of hope, and he gave me so much hope in that moment that I knew this was going to be our baby. And 2 days later, we actually met with her birth parents and didn't share any of this with them. And they actually presented us with a pink Swarovski crystal pacifier as their way of telling us they were choosing us. So it was amazing. So we continued to meet with them, and then on July 20th, I was actually supposed to go on a 100-mile bike ride thing with a bunch of my girlfriends. And I know it's crazy, I'm weird. And it was like a fun thing, you stop and meet and do stuff. And my Jeep was packed, my bike was on my Jeep, and I went into work early so I could leave early, and I got a phone call from her birth mom. And I'm like, that's weird, because she's young, she normally just texts me. And she's like, I think my water broke. I'm like, what else would it be? I don't know. I guess that makes the pregnancy. I'm like, so, okay. She's like, so just want to let you know. And she seemed fine. So she's like, I'm going to have my mom take me to the hospital, so I'll keep you updated. But if I were you, I'd start getting ready. So she was due August 13th. So this was almost a month early, and I had nothing ready. So I was like, okay, wow. Called my husband, let him know, and I was working on a project at work. Thank God I had the peace enough to just finish it so I can get done, and my boss knew about the adoption. I'm like, I gotta go, I can't, I gotta go. So I left. I remember I went to Babies R Us to like get the essentials, and I remember I walked in and just looked at the wall, and I'm like, I just started bawling. I called my friend Heather, I'm like, I don't even know what to get, it's just so overwhelming. So she told me what I should get, and then I went home and we got a call from the birth mom's mom, saying that she was dilated to a 5, and that she probably wouldn't have the baby till later that night. The plan was to just be in the waiting room when she was born, but not in the room, so we could at least be at the hospital. So while we're trying to decide where our last meal was going to be before we become parents, we got a phone call 5 minutes later saying, yeah, just kidding, she's at a 10, you better come up here right now. Now, I mean, you guys have all had kids. I don't know how you go from a 5 to a 10 in 5 minutes, but somehow she did. So we rushed to the hospital, and she was all they know by, so it's a little far for us. And we got there, and they weren't answering the phone, so she was obviously pushing. And like 30 minutes later, the birth mom's parents came out, and they were dancing and cheering and so happy, and they were like, congratulations, your daughter is here. And when they said that, that was just like, I mean, they were putting their own feelings aside. Their little girl just had a baby, and they were thinking of us in that moment. And so after they got, both of them all cleaned up and everything, we were ready to go back to meet them. And before we walked in, our birth mom's mom is such a blessing, I just have to say. She is so wonderful. She went into the room first and she said, I want to take a picture and capture the moment you lay eyes on your daughter for the first time. So she, as soon as we opened the door, she started taking a whole bunch of pictures. And I have a picture of, that's the first time we met Lydia. So she took that picture for us, and a whole bunch of other ones I was not going to post because I was just a blubbery mess. And so we got to meet her, and it was just wonderful. It was a lot of tears, happy and sad, obviously. So the next day, Olivia's birth mom was being discharged, but Olivia had to stay an extra night because she had test positive for strep B, I think it was. So we actually got to stay in the hospital with her. Now I couldn't be admitted since I wasn't a patient, but they put her in like a step-down NICU type thing. But because she wasn't anything wrong with her, we were able to stay there with her. So we got to experience spending a night, in the hospital when you have your baby, which not many adoptive parents get to experience. So it was God gave us so many small little gifts like that that helped us feel like what it was like to have our own baby. We had family and friends come visit us, and I remember the next day, we were getting ready to leave, and we're about to walk out, and this nurse shows up with a wheelchair, and I'm like, you know she's adopted. Why are you showing up with a wheelchair? And she said, we don't care how you become a mom in this hospital. We treat all our moms the same. So she made me get in the wheelchair. And I just remember just like crying because for me, I mean, I had only experienced 3 times in a wheelchair, leaving a hospital with empty arms. Every time I had a DNC. And this was the first time I got to experience what it was like to have my own baby, because all these people seemed to know they didn't know that I didn't give birth there, and they're all congratulating me, and it was just a sweet moment again that God gave me to experience that. So 2 weeks later, on Olivia's 2-week birthday, the court papers were signed and she was legally ours, and there was no turning back at that point. She is an absolute joy. I know a lot of you know her. She was an exceptional baby. She was a great toddler. She was like the perfect kid. She still is the perfect kid. My son has no hope. She's so smart. She's so compassionate and caring. She loves everybody. She's so funny. She's so animated. And she truly loves Jesus. If you hear this girl pray, and I'm like, I don't know how you, it's all God, because I didn't teach her to pray like that. It's amazing. And no biological child could have ever come close to being a more perfect fit for our family than her. She was our miracle. And it makes my heart smile when friends notice. One of my friends had just told me this week that she noticed some of her mannerisms were similar to mine. And it just made me so happy to know that not everything is nature, something is nurture. So after Olivia, we knew we wanted her to have a sibling. So we're like, okay, well, we're gonna start the process again. And like I said, it's a long process. It was kind of daunting again, but we're like, obviously the end result is amazing. So we went with a different agency this time. We went with Bethany Christian the second time. The first time was a much smaller agency. Only because, as my husband said, he's like, I'm getting too old for this. So I don't want to be in my later years adopting a kid, because sometimes it takes 3-4 years. You don't know how long it'll take. So we knew Bethany being a bigger agency, we had a better chance of getting a child sooner. And they actually have a lot of classes you have to take. You have to have 15 hours of training before you get approved and 15 hours after. So it's a lot of work, but it's good. I actually wish we would have done that the first time. So we did all the same paperwork again from scratch, like as if we had never adopted again. That's why we're stopped at 2. And we got it all done, and we were approved in August of 2015. And we were getting potential birth moms before we were even approved, because they're a bigger agency, but they just never panned out. So in January of 2016, I was sitting with all of you, and I'm sitting in MOPS, and I remember I went to pick up my daughter on my beds, and we were coming back in, and as we were coming back in to eat lunch, she's like, Mom, I think I want a baby brother now. And we've been praying every night for God to give us a baby, and oh no, a baby sister. Every night was a baby sister. Never, I don't want a brother, I want a sister. But this is the first time she ever said, I want a baby brother. Because her little friends, Nina and Gianna, are her sisters. And Nina apparently told her that day that she could be like a sister to her. So now that she had her as a sister, it was okay to have a brother. So I said, okay, from your lips to God's ears. So we ate lunch, we were walking out, and I was walking out with Angela Miller, and I got a phone call. And it was from our agency. And Angela helped me get Olivia in the Jeep, and she said, you better call me after her. So I got her in, she instantly fell asleep like she always does, and I pretty much just drove around the Plymouth Canton area talking to the agency about this baby, this family who was choosing us, and they were pregnant with a baby boy. As soon as she said it was a boy, my heart just leapt. I was like, oh my gosh, especially after what Olivia had just said. Olivia had fallen asleep, not heard any of our conversation, so after that I called my husband and my mom, and then Angela, and I got home, put Olivia in bed, and when she woke up from her nap, I didn't tell her anything. And the first things out of her mouth were, Mom, I think God's going to give me a baby brother. Out of nowhere. From the mouth of babes. For her to say that, like that, I knew this baby was going to be ours. I didn't even have to meet them. I knew God was already speaking through my daughter. So we met with them, and everything was great. They seemed to really like us, and she was 35 weeks pregnant when we met her, so it was going to come up pretty soon. I remember on February 20th, I took the birth mom to her ultrasound because she wasn't able to drive, and thankfully Olivia was spending the night at Grandma's house, so because I ended up staying in the hospital a little later. Apparently, the baby was laying on his umbilical cord, so every time she had a contraction, his heart rate would drop. So they decided to induce. So I was actually able to be in the delivery room when he was born, so I got to experience what it was like to see a baby come out, and I got to see the ultrasound earlier, which I'd never seen an ultrasound of a live baby before. I always had my miscarriage one. So all these different little things that God kept giving me were just precious gifts. And on February 20th, Alex decided to join us. And so there's a picture with little Alex. So that was the first time we got to hold him. And I got to hold him when he was like minutes old. Like, I know all of you have got to experience that. As soon as your baby's born, they just put him right on you. But I've never, like, minutes. I'm just looking at this little baby. I'm like, you were just born. Just crazy to me. And it just made me realize that we need to, just be so thankful we get those opportunities. 1 month on his 1 month birthday, his birth parents went to court and they signed off their rights, and he was legally ours. So our family was finally complete. So I gotta say though, I know if those of you guys are boy moms, boys are way different. Oh my gosh, they're crazy. He's so energetic. He gets into everything, and he can't even walk yet. He just like does his butt scooting thing. He always has the biggest smile though, and he's always laughing, and he is such a mama's boy. Like, I have to take him with me everywhere. And he laughs at absolutely anything Olivia tells him or does. Like, he just belly laughs. Loves to snuggle. He's so much fun. He is the perfect completion to our family. So after 11 long years of infertility, 3 horrible miscarriages, a failed adoption, and 2 miracle adoptions, our family was finally complete. And my faith grew in leaps and bounds from the true hope of God. I can honestly say, looking back now, that I would not have had it any other way. I would gladly go back and endure every one of those emotional, physical, spiritual struggles, knowing that Alex and Olivia were going to be at the end of it. My plan, which makes me laugh when I say my plan was to have 3 kids, one after another, go back to work, have my career, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that was my plan. And then God laughed at me. Instead, God's plan was way different. My husband and I had 10 years of marriage before we became parents. And during that, I was an engineer, so having the 2 incomes was able to have us save up enough that I was able to actually be able to stay home with both my kids. I got to work part-time for my daughter, and now I stay home full-time, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise. It allowed me to be in MOPS with all of you guys. I mean, I have met some of my closest friends in here. Friends that I do life with, that I laugh with, that I cry with, that I eat soup with, that I run with. I mean, my whole MOPS table ran the Detroit Marathon in 2013. And if God didn't have this plan for me, I never would have met any of them. It's just such a blessing to see that my plan didn't work out, but that God's did. So I just want to give you guys all hope. Hope to know that if God puts a desire in your heart, if you know it's from Him, and you know it's His will, then it will come to pass. But it has to be His will, and it has to be in His perfect timing, not yours. That's the hardest part to try to overcome, but just know that it might not be what you think you wanted, but it's everything that you could have ever needed. So I just wanted to thank you guys all for listening to my story, and I just want to also let you know, if any of you are interested in adoption or foster care, Northridge actually offers a class on May 20th. It's on a Saturday from 9 to 12, and it's about anything you need to know. It's very informal, very laid back, there's even food, and it's about adoption and foster care. And I'm going to post the link on the Facebook page later for anybody who wants to sign up. It's free. And if there's any questions you have, I mean, feel free to message me, come up to me, ask me. I mean, I have three things in my life that I'm very passionate about: Jesus, running, and adoption. And I love talking to anyone about any one of those three. So just please seek me out, or if you're even struggling with infertility, Susan Kassab has actually offered to pray with anyone who would like to come in the back and find her. And I know this is something a lot of us struggle with. And I know it's a hard thing to deal with. So reach out to somebody, especially if you know if they've walked in your shoes, because it makes it so much easier to endure when you're with somebody else. So we have some table questions for you guys to discuss at your tables, and I just really hope you guys are all able to just open up with one another and share your hearts. Thank you.